wonderful day. This is a blessing to have you all in the loom, and this is a living archive July series, and it's a final bit. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final conversation of a living archive July series 2026. It is a pleasure to have you with us as we conclude this month-long exploration into one of the most fundamental questions of our time. How do narratives shape memory, identity, and the future of our societies? Over the past weeks, a living archive has brought together heritage professionals, researchers, technologists, creatives, and community voices from different contexts to explore the relationship between storytelling, power, technology, and memory. We began this journey by examining the archive as narrative infrastructure. We have explored the understanding that archive are not simply places where the past is stored. They are systems that influence what societies remember, how communities understand themselves, and whose voices become part of collective history. In our second conversation, we have explored media influence and cultural power. We reflected on how narratives are created, amplified, contested, and transformed into forces that shape identity and society. Last week, we entered one of the conversation of our digital era: AI, algorithm, memory politics. We examine how emerging technologies influence visibility, representation, and the future of governance of digital memory. And today, we are at the next essential question. How do we move from conversations about heritage and storytelling toward systems where communities actively participating in preserving, interpreting, and sharing their own memory? Welcome to our Living July Series 2026, Week 4. This is the final conversation of the July series. Our Living Archive was created around a simple but powerful conviction. Memory should not only be preserved for communities, memory should be preserved with communities. A living archive represents a glowing conversation between heritage practitioners, researchers, technology innovators, creative communities, educational institutions, cultural organizations, and knowledge holders. Our ambition has never been to create another static repository. Our ambition is to create how digital heritage ecosystems can become living environments where communities are not only represented but empowered. Because heritage is not only about what we inherit, heritage is about what we continue to create, transmit, and contribute to future generations. Today's conversation, therefore, moves us from storytelling to participation, documentation to ownership, and of course, from dialogue to infrastructure. Today, we are honored to welcome three remarkable contributors who also reflect different dimensions of this transformation. Their perspective bring together language, identity, technology, communication, and the heritage governance. Together, they help us explore one central question: how do we build archives where communities are simply subject of history, where communities are not simply subject of history, but active authors of the future? It's a great pleasure to introduce Olivier Mugisha, works at the intersection of language, technology, and the digital inclusion. His work explores how local languages and community knowledge systems can be strengthened through digital approaches, ensuring that indigenous knowledge remains accessible, meaningful, and relevant in this digital age. His perspective reminds us that language itself is an archive. Every word carries memory, every expression carries history, every language carries the worldview of community. You're welcome, Mr. Olivier.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clever.
All right, our second contributor is Egol Mostavishkov. Egol expose the relations between storytelling, identity formation, collective memory, and emerging digital environments. His research examines narratives' influence on social in algorithmic spaces, including questions around cognitive influence, AI mediated information environments, and the politics of memory. His work challenges us to consider who shapes narratives, who controls visibility, and how do we protect meaningful memory in an increasingly automated world. You're most welcome, Mr. Igor. And I think I pronounced your name very well. Igor Mostovishkov. You're welcome, brother. All right. The last but not least, she's Guria Milanese, our third contributor. Guria works at the intersection of strategic communication, cultural heritage, and creative industries. Her work focuses on building bridges between research, cultural practice, and community participation. Through her research and professional engagement, she explores how heritage can become a platform for civic participation, resilience, and collaboration on sustainable cultural development. You're welcome, Mrs. Guria.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here with you all today.
A great pleasure. And Latifa, she's a product lead, system analyst at IRAGE Corps, working at a section of digital innovation, cultural heritage, and community centered technology. She's passionate about building inclusive digital systems. She focuses on designing platforms that empower communities to preserve, shape, and share their own stories. As a new host of a living archive, as we'll be able to announce soon, she's committed to fostering meaningful conversation that transform heritage from a record of the past into a living participatory legacy for future generation. You're welcome, Mrs. Latifa.
Thank you so much, Elisha, for the inspiring introduction. Good afternoon, everyone joining us from the different parts of the world. Yeah, I'm Latifa, and I'm pleased to be working with you on the A Living Archive. It's nice to meet you all.
You're welcome, Mrs. Latifa. So straight to our today's session. We often speak about storytelling as a tool for preserving culture. But beyond storytelling itself, what systems are required to ensure as community remain active custodians of their own narratives? If you don't mind, Mr. Igor, you can go with the question.
Can you hear me? Because it seems my mic didn't work the first time.
Oh, sorry, okay. We often speak about storytelling as a tool for preserving culture. But beyond storytelling itself, what systems are required to ensure communities remain active custodians of their own narratives?
Oh yeah. Thanks for the question. I think it's really important to remember that collecting and actually sharing and telling stories is the force of itself. Because I come from the point of view that the identities are the stories that we tell ourselves, and those stories are written for us by someone else, by people, by power, by tech, and so it means that the stories that we use to answer ourselves a question, who am I, most of the time are written for us by somebody else, meaning that we have little control of the of the identities that we have. So that means that there's a lot of possibilities to actually redefine those stories that we tell ourselves. And I believe that sharing your own personal story and delving deeper into your own values and talking with people from your community actually provides a huge room for improvement and actually redefining and understanding. So what is my true story is? What makes me me, and where I am and where others are beginning. And in my experience, I have my main background is journalism, and I work with many people coming from different fields and backgrounds. And when you provide a platform for people to share their experience and their stories, one of the most amazing things that happens is that you see people coming together because they see that someone else had experienced something similar to their experience, and that creates this collective sort of a dialogue when you understand that you're not alone, and we all, even though each of us has their own unique story, we kind of live in the universal kind of a context. So I believe that when you provide and create the environment for people to actually share and spread stories, that's the first step of being more in control of your own identity, your own memory, and the future of your community.
Well expressed, Mr. Egold. And drawing from ET related researches, I've seen that you bring a case study of Russia trying to eliminate the fellow neighbors. Can you hear me well?
Yeah. That's true. That's one of the projects that I'm doing. For the last 3 years, I've been investigating Russia's attempts to erase Ukrainian identity in the war that Russia has been doing since 2014. And so basically, Russia is a huge country, and Kremlin uses stories and narratives to control this huge country where we have more than 200 ethnicities speaking more than 200 languages. And Kremlin also uses narratives and stories and memory politics and history revisionism to divide and conquer the neighboring countries. And I see that one of the most, and I mean, and we definitely can learn something looking at what our states, especially the authoritarian states, are doing. We can learn and see how the identity is actually functioning, because one of the first things that Russia's army does when they occupy the new territories, they firstly try to conquer the TV tower in order to change the TV programming and turn on the propaganda TV shows. They are working towards conquering the journalists, the media, and then they completely turn the museums in the occupied lands into cogs of their propaganda machine, spreading the propaganda there. And because people, especially kids, they go into the museums, and if the state has a possibility to spread their own narratives, people will slowly, over the years, they will start changing their views because of the stories that they've been growing up with. So this is true, and I've been following this beat for 3 years now, and publishing some of my findings in different outlets. And yeah, that's unfortunately I'm afraid this is not going anywhere. And looking into this provides us a lot of insights, because the same people, the same mechanisms might be used by Kremlin when and if they will try to attempt to conquer the Europe, for example, which a lot of people in Europe are afraid might happen in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Eagle, for sharing that experiment. Actually, a critical one. And from your perspectives, I draw that identities is critical, and it goes hand in hand with belongingness. So, around your experiment, what does meaningfully ownership look like within digital heritage ecosystem, if there is a such cold war to erase a certain community's identity physical, how in a digital ecosystem may look like? To repeat the question, what does meaningful ownership look like within a digital heritage ecosystem, drawing from the physical, I mean, the physical case study you brought on paper?
That's a really good question, and to be honest, I think this is something that we will have to look and continue exploring, because those things, especially the ownership of identity in digital, is something that will be changing and transforming dramatically because of AI and because of the new technology. Because I mean, it seems that we're getting, each day we're getting one step closer to developing, with the use of modern technologies, almost some sort of a telepathy, right? We'll be at some point we'll most definitely will be able to communicate and talk without even having to actually talk. And the moment when you realize that you could have other people's thoughts in your head and your thoughts in other people's heads, that kind of brings a lot of unknown questions to us, like what does it mean what does it mean actually to be myself in the circumstances like that, where I end and where other people begin. So it's a tricky question of the ownership, and I think there's no simple answer to this. But coming from the, I don't know, the narrative therapy, for example, it teaches us that the ownership of your own story begins when you're actually starting to ask yourself tough questions and trying to filter and to find your own true values. So I'd say that the answer to the ownership lies not in the digital sphere, but within yourself. And there are a lot of interesting tools that you could use in order to tap into and ask yourself those questions. But the further we go as a humankind, the harder it will get for us to actually be capable of asking those questions and finding those true, authentic things and values that are really personal for each of us, because we're more and more will be blending into each other as a society.
Wow. Thank you so much for such a powerful statement, Eagle. You still around? Yeah, it is really intense to run from your experience, and thank you so much for that contribution. And I draw from a reflection from what you said. The ownership starts when you are aware of what is your identity, and this is what we're trying to do, particularly for Africa and the future of Africa, starting in Rwanda. Thank you so much, Diego, once again. And Julia, if you're still around, historically, many archives have been designed around institutions collecting and preserving knowledge. How do we redesign archives so communities may become contributors, interpreters, decision makers, and active participants?
Yes, thank you, Alicia, for your question. I mean, I think it would be interesting connecting to this question to bring a bit of the experience that I had with my recent research for my master's. Well, I come from São Paulo in Brazil, and in the recent years, I've been really intrigued by the situation of cultural heritage in all the expressions that could manifest cultural heritage, of course, including archives. And there have been really recent cases in which this cultural heritage was under threat. And it was actually because of so many different causes, but we could say not only about urban rapid development, transformations, and real estate speculation, and so. But what was important for me to acknowledge in this research was not the cultural heritage being under threat itself, but how communities, local communities, were rapidly, were promptly willing to not only safeguard this cultural heritage, but use these this experience to reshape the way that this cultural heritage was being told, was being defined in the city. So what was really interesting for me, it's even though there were different cultural practitioners and were different environments, with different problems that they were facing, the main thing for me was to understand how, through culture, through redefining their own heritage, they were also claiming for a more participatory way of engaging in cultural heritage, in the storytelling, in shaping the narrative in their own way, in their by their own territories, which is something that was very important for me also to acknowledge, the way that they could relate to the territories, and the way that, yes, they were claiming this safeguarding of cultural heritage as a way to claim for a more participatory governance, you know. And I think it's somehow really related to what you were promoting in this debate with among ourselves, you know, today. So how important it is to empower these local communities and these cultural practitioners to be in the main voice of these narratives, of these storytellings, and how ultimately this is important to, you know, think about a new model of governance in terms of cultural heritage. And I think I hope to connect to have connected with your question, but yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
that.
Touching on the
Yeah,
different,
actually, you draw. Yes, please.
yeah, you said something about like the participation, and I want to like touch on the literal human side of participation. Like we often celebrate participation as the ideal. You know, we celebrate participation as something that is very ideal, but the true participation in it of itself, it requires like trust and shared responsibility, sometimes the willingness to give up institutional control. So like in your experience as culture researcher, like what is the biggest barrier preventing communities from becoming genuine co-creators of heritage rather than simply contributing to the actual already found heritage?
Yeah, no, this is one more very relevant question, and it's very complex because I mean, I think this is the main challenge, you know, because it's still our main goal, but it's very difficult to actually see in practice, right, as you're saying. And what was interesting for me to witness is that local communities did not want to, when they were exactly claiming for this participatory governance, they were willing to dialogue with the people in the institutions that could make this change, you know. And so for me, I think it was also important to understand in my research that without this dialogue, without this collaboration between policymakers, cultural practitioners, local communities, urbanists, researchers. So we have in our society, you know, in our own experience of living as a society, so much knowledge, you know, that could be and should be put together in order to co-create new models of governance, you know. And so for me, I think I was very much initially in my research, I was very centered into putting the local communities, of course, in the center of their decisions. But it's more complex than that, because you have to find a way to bridge, you know, the conversations that sometimes will be very different, and the perspectives will be very different, you know, between these cultural agents. And I think that's the challenge. I think, of course, there is not any formula. I mean, you know, I think it's something very organic that. It really depends a lot of factors, but what's more important for me to acknowledge in this research process was that there has to be a way to make an effort to bridge these different and these very much opposing perspectives, but not well. The thing is, like, without letting go of the fact that the local communities should be the ones that should decide what affects their own heritage, their own territories, and ultimately their memory, their identity, because that's something that Diego was telling me. Ultimately, it's a dispute. These conflicts, they shape people's identities. This is very deep. This is very strong. So I think, I don't know, I hope I replied to your question correctly.
Yeah,
So I'd like to
yeah.
ask Mr. Olivier, because we cannot, focus solely on the heritage without discussing in deep about the language, which is often seen as simply a tool for communication. But Mr. Olivier's work, it reminds us that the language is also a vessel of memory and identity, and that every language carries a unique way of understanding the world. So I was about to ask, like your works have mainly focused on strengthening digital inclusion through languages. So beyond making sure that our words or our languages are digitized, how can we create systems that ensure that the communities themselves, they become the active custodians of their linguistic heritage, rather than just becoming, as we were previously saying, passive contributors?
Okay, thank you so much, Lati, for the good question. First, I'll start with a brief introduction. My name is Olivier, as Arisha said. I work as a linguist at Digital Muganda. It's an AI company. It's located here in Kigali. And I'm also head of operations in a Kisima. It's also language service provider. I did linguistics and literature at the University of Rwanda, and I'm now pursuing my master's degree in communication and media studies. So I'm afraid that I'm falling in a lot of people's profession here. So back to your question, you asked about how people can like not only um, speak their words and then it ends there in simple things, if I can say. Is that your question?
Yeah, like how do we make sure that like the beyond digitizing our words, like we create the systems which the communities become become themselves the custodians of their languages?
Okay. Actually, I would start with a short a short story of how these things work, like how words are captured into AI. When we are training, like we have we may train from text, from audios, from videos. It all depends on what we are intended, or like what we are breathing at the moment. And then people, every data we use, everything we use is from people. Like if it's audios, they are from people. If they are text, they are from social medias, from books written. And sometimes a lot many people write these stories. They post their kind of life on social medias, but they don't know that all of those are also part of what we use in creating this inclusivity of language. Like indirectly, language like is intangible, but language is also cultural heritage, because like it also is it carries collective memories, identity, knowledge, and oral traditions. So when those people put their texts on social medias, they don't know that they are creating something tangible that is going to help for generations. For example, if I am like posting, sometimes people tend to create different content based on what their interests. And if I'm posting, for example, about Rwandan culture, people maybe in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, 20 years, if they want to know something, they will be coming to read those content, those things that I've said. And with AI as well, they will be included. But the main question that I ask myself here is that sometimes we create these things and then they are used without their creators' consent. Like, I'm going out there and I want to do something. I don't want to go out and correct um, maybe the data that I'm going to use from the real people. Like, if I'm
Yeah.
going to put something out there, I might, people sometimes tend to create something that is not really the truth. It might be the truth, but not 100%. So if you did take those things from what they have written and then use it, those systems that you are trying to build, they are going to rely on something that is not really that should not be reliable. Instead of going to the people and you ask them what you want, there is one research that I participated in. It is it was trying to capture people from, there is a people that we call Batwa in Rwanda. Is one of those that are located in Musanze. And this research was more, it tended to capture how those people live, how they communicate, what languages they use. And these people, um, their languages was not fully captured. Like, when you are going there, you have to go with someone who is going to help you. And then when we were collecting the data from there, those people, we found out that people, they can fight, they can do something. Like, we as other people who are not in the same place can maybe consider it terrible. And then they can fight, and then a few minutes later they are having fun, they are enjoying. So it's their culture, it's how they were from their ancestors. Back to what you
Wow.
were asking, people. Sorry, did you say
Yes,
something?
please go ahead, Olivier.
Okay, back to what you were asking. People, in one way or another, in whatever we are creating, whatever we are saying, we are creating long-lasting memories that will be back uh, one day. But the critical question that we can ask ourselves is that, is everything covered? Like, if people are participating in this innovation, is everything really covered? Like, everything that we need. For me, as I'm into languages, are more using the examples from language. Like, if we are maybe trying to capture a certain language, for example, if it's Kinyarwanda or Yoruba from Nigeria or any other language, is everything covered? Like, if we are using, for example, we are in Kigali, and if this we are communicating with people from the city, those systems will know that language and think that it's is the truth.
Yeah.
Avoiding, I mean, like, without thinking of other sides of the country, or maybe other people from outside the country who are speaking the same language. So people are really creating something long lasting that can help younger generations to come. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for the question.
That was very nice to hear from you, Mr. Olivier. I'd like to a little bit go back to the side to Mr. Igor, asking a little bit of the tough questions, because honestly, we know that history is written by those in power. So a really hard truth to accept, because it is not very intricate perspective to say that people who are in authority are the ones that write history for the indigenous communities. But what do you think would happen? Like, what's your take on the fact that we want to make the communities themselves to be able to choose what they pass on to the next generation? Because that to me sounds like a living archive. We're not simply discussing like digital preservations, like we are exploring how the memory can become a participation for the ownership. So what's your take on that?
Well, I couldn't agree more, actually. I think it is quite important to. I mean, you can take your family, for example. How well do you know the history of your own family? How many generations going back? Do you know the story of family? I think that me personally, I'm not that really well aware. I mean, I guess I know the names, and I saw some pictures of my grand-grands, but like going deeper, it's really tough. So even if you were to focus on preserving the memory of one particular family, that's going to be a huge undertaking. It's not a simple task to do. I also think what I was thinking when Oliver was talking, I was thinking about the fact that memory itself, from a neuro perspective, is a really unreliable thing, because the memories can be faked. We know that the way our brain is wired is that every time we go back to some of our past memories, we in a way we kind of destroy it. And every time, so the more times you remember something, the less this image has to do with the actual facts of what was happening. So it's really hard to preserve a memory even within yourself. And
Yeah.
like, and the more extended you go, the harder it is to actually preserve that kind of thing. And this is I guess one of the main reasons why those in power, and I mean it's not only the state, I mean the companies, the corporations, the church, the religion, all of them at some point trying to control the memory, because it's so unreliable and it's so easy to kind of mix the real things that happened with some crafted narratives that are really makes it a bit easier to control and to manipulate. So I guess it's really important to, once again, starting with your own self and with people surrounding you, trying to preserve memories, always remembering that your own brain is not reliable. Your memory can be faked. You can have implanted memories about things that never happened. There are a lot of actors around in the world that really want to put their own ideas and memories in your head, because whoever controls the stories and memories controls us. So if you can create this sort of a network and you can pass on the knowledge, that's really great, and it's really important. But I think it's also important to remember it's really tall order. It's really hard to do.
Dealing with the participation of the community and having to decide who gets to keep the memory, who gets to describe the narrative that we take as our culture and our heritage. I want to hear a little bit of the insights of Mrs. Milanis and you, Mr. Igo. Like, is everything worth preserving anyways? Like, we often focus on the scrutiny of like losing this heritage and our culture, and it being replaced by this algorithms and technology and artificial intelligence. But I think one of the most critical questions we could ask ourselves is everything worth keeping anyways? Is our culture as indigenous communities worth having it as a whole unchanged? Because let's be honest, like there's two sides of the coin. The culture is a good thing, and it makes a big part of our identity and how we are and how we live our life. But then there's also some like bad practices and rituals and self-humiliation rituals and all that kind of stuff that really, if you really think about it from a psychological standpoint or from normally biological standpoint, it is worth leaving behind. So how do we balance the fact that we have to leave some of it and adapt and preserve the rest of it without making it a complex and applicable
Julie, please go first.
Okay. No, it's a very, very important question. I'm really glad actually that you brought up, because I mean, while I was also engaging in my master's project, I was faced with this question, and it's a big dilemma, because it comes also, if you think about it, from a very Western way of understanding memory, right? Because, well, I'm from São Paulo, I'm from Brazil, and in Latin America, there are very different way and cosmovisions of understanding culture and living and practicing culture. For example, in indigenous perspectives, not everything has to be always conserved, and always preserved. And this doesn't cancel the fact that this is still cultural heritage, and this is going to be ritualized into something else. I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but what I'm trying to say here is that, once again, I think it's it's a very interesting question. It's not easy, because I think we face now today challenges in a global level that require us to use memory and identity as a way of safeguarding existence of many social groups, So preservation, of course, it's an important tool to have in mind in terms of safeguarding one's existence, But but at the same time, as I was saying, I think there are very, very different perspectives, coming from traditional native people that for instance, want to have different relations to their own cultural heritage. So it's very complicated and it's very complex. For example, yes, a Western institution, insisting in preserving something that the local community itself understand as something that should be somehow, be transformed into something else, and not, let's say, preserved in the way that they were expecting them to preserve. I don't know if I, once again, explain myself, but what I'm trying to say here is that, of course, preservation, it's something that we should have in mind, but this is a very complex question that, once again, make us think about the importance of putting local people, local communities in the center of the decisions of what affects their heritage. I think that's the main, the main thing we have to have in mind.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful answer. Latifa, when you were asking the question and when I was answering Judah's answer, I came up with an analogy, because you asked, what are the things that we should leave behind and what are the things that we should take with us? And I started thinking about my own experience as a political exile, because I left Russia once the war in Ukraine started almost 5 years ago, and me and my family, my friends, we cannot go home. We're not in the foreseeable future, doesn't seem that we'll have a chance to go back to Russia. And kind of when you leave your country and you have to pack your whole life in one suitcase, like what are the things that you take? Most probably you will take the most valuable, important things like the papers and probably some clothing and cash and stuff. So what do you probably you'll be lucky enough to put something of a sentimental value in a suitcase, like some sort of souvenir. But when you're leaving and the country kind of exists, but you also the same, it kind of doesn't exist because you cannot go there. I eventually found out that one of the things that you take away with you is the sort of a collective experience you can go and tap into, talking with the people coming from the same background as you, because you have this huge shared collective knowledge and experience of memes and jokes and songs and food and places that you have to go. And even though you're not able to go there, you still kind of you have them with you. And it reminds me of a study I read recently from China, which really amazed me, because they took VR headset, and they took two people from the same town, and they didn't know each other before that, and they used and in researchers they created this software that helped those people coming from same city to recreate a cultural object from the city they came from that doesn't exist anymore, and they were building this building like a temple from the memory, and talking to each other, trying to remember this building that doesn't exist anymore. They have some pictures left, some photos in the internet, recreating this building, and certainly it didn't look the same way in the VR environment, but it was something new, something that they created together, from the collective memory that they have. So they kind of took something old, integrated this with something new, creating a new kind of experience based on their cultural experience that is of a sentimental value for them. So probably we also can learn something from that, meaning that in the long run, people will find a way to come up with understanding what is worth taking with you and what you can leave behind because you don't have the chance to take it with you.
Yeah, that's a very open and abstract insight, because as the young generation, a lot of people really want to focus more on the okay, but the culture is not that good anyways, like as an excuse, as a preface to not deal with the cultural heritage or what the generations had done before them. So I'd like to ask a little bit on Mr. Olivier about you told us about the project that you were, I think you were working on it while in masters. I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to ask you, how do we make sure that, because in this realm of AI, artificial intelligence, and digitization, how do we make sure we fit a whole culture into Odo? Because it is very far-fetched, if I can say like that, narrative, because it's a culture that was passed on from generations. Some countries have cultures that go way beyond a very long time. How do you make sure the culture, the linguistics, the rituals, the festivals, and all of that is really fits into the model? Because it's really, as I was saying, a very far place where we can imagine an AI model mimicking what we call our culture that was passed on from previous generations. So how do we deal with that complexity?
Thank you for the good question. We can preserve the culture, its object and records, but culture itself keeps changing. Like if we are speaking about culture, maybe in people from 2010, there is also speaking about culture. People from 2000 were also speaking about culture, and we are also creating culture for the maybe next 15 and or plus years to come. So with AI capturing everything, I think is possible, but it's a long journey. Like I've given an example of how we train our models, but not everything is there, and it's a bit tough to capture some. There are some what we call hard words, that like that kind of terminologies in language. And when we are trying to train, we get we mostly get this common language, like those words that are used daily in dairy activities, and then we miss those deep deep language where terminologies that carries a lot of meaning and a lot of culture. And then when doing this, like we have like from what we have um what I it's kind of a huge data set, but it misses a lot of let me call it cultural terminology. And
Okay.
we recently took a time, and then we had to go through all of the data we have, and then what it might be missing. And we found out that there are like things that people do not actually use that much. For example, if we go into history and look at uh, I mean, historical tools that we use in our homes, historical tools that were used for transport, maybe historical tools that were used in Paris. All of those things, we can capture their names, but there is deep meaning behind.
Yeah.
So language can we can capture into this digital inclusivity. We can capture the language, but the question that we always ask ourselves is how we capture, and we then capture the meaning behind those uh, texts, behind those tools, those visuals, like those monumentals and stuff. So
Yeah.
I
Wow.
think on my side, I think to include to make sure to ensure that everything is included, like included in digital technologies, is having everyone uh, participating, like including those people from the rural areas, those people from the forests. There are, there are still people living in the forest, and including everyone. Like if everyone is participating, we can have uh, our culture, our languages included into digital tools. Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
Edita, I call upon you to continue.
Okay. Thank you so much, Latifa. Thank you, everyone. It was such a wonderful conversation. I've run a lot. And Eagle is heading to another session, and Iguria is saying she's about to leave. Maybe after continuing, we can give Iguria time to give us like closing remarks and what you think can be the next move.
Well, I first like to thank you all for this invitation, because it's always really great to see how we can really exchange different perspective from different cultural backgrounds, into this really relevant theme. And I'm really looking forward actually to keep on talking to people like you, to people who are actually interested in seeing different backgrounds, and understanding these themes as a matter of everyone. I think what's really important for me, once I started to engage into this cultural research universe, is that culture is not for just cultural practitioners, I think that's something very, very important to say, because often we see that culture is very neglected as something that should be not seen as a priority. But I think that's why I feel very inspired from these conversations, because I can see how much powerful it can be when we gather ourselves, coming from different places, from different with their own stories, and sharing our experiences, and also sharing our questions, because we're not always certain about things. Sometimes I think, as we were discussing today, we face very complex challenges that not always are very simple to answer. But when we gather these different views and perspectives, and on culture, I think it's very, very inspiring, and I think it's the answer to many, many, many of the questions that we have today. And I just feel like I have to thank you for this invitation, and hope to collaborate on, of course, future conversations. Going to be always available for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're
That
welcome,
was
Giri,
cool.
and have a wonderful session. The next one you're heading to. Olivier, do you have like a closing remarks or a takeaway to leave before heading to the end?
I
See you,
would like
Lydia.
to thank you and everyone for the invite. It was such a good conversation. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot and got a lot of ideas, and I really look forward to participating into more of conversations like this, and hopefully we will. And uh, as of now, I think it was also a wonderful session, like looking into languages and how they can be preserved, um, like all those deep meaning from words, like we can do translations sometimes, and then only translation does cannot like mean everything about the word. Like we can say, for example, one thing, and then we translate it this way in English, for example, and then it has a lot of things, like a deeper meaning from what it actually says in its source language. So it's really wonderful things to look at. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you so much, Olivier. I understand that localization is critical when it comes
Very
to
critical.
the approach of this digital transformation. And I think the August series will be all about ethical approach to the digital transformation, and it will remain it. So we don't have to adapt any emerging technology as it is. However, the localization to the local context is very matters. Latifa, you look like you have something you like to contribute.
Actually, it's more like just a deeply heartfelt thank you for everyone who participated, even those who left. I really am impressed by the work of Mr. Olivier and all the other contributors to this conversation. And I was going to like give like a closing, because as we're dealing with the culture and how to integrate it into the technological field and the preservation models, how can we there's this question I've been asking myself. So the communities are creating their stories, but the algorithms, they decide which stories the people encounter, because honestly, the social media, the um, the websites and all of everything, they're controlled by the models. SEOs and all that, they're all optimized to be recognized by the models. So if the algorithms decide which stories the people encounter, so who really shapes the collective memory today? Is it the people? Is it the technology? It's a quote unquote unanswered question by the time, because we can say the communities are the ones creating their stories, but if the algorithms decide which stories the people see and hear and listen to and remember and save as a memory in their minds, so I'm really asking who really shapes the collective memory. That was like the kind of ambiguity I've been facing, but it's fine.
Wow, wow, that's very great things. But actually, what I can say in brief about your question, the algorithms are all created. Like they are not. I mean, they are built. They are built by
Exactly.
people. They are created by people, and all of those things they do are our thinkings. If we say
Yeah.
we want you to, if it's you mentioned about social media, we want you to show more this content, for example, about these people doing these kind of things. That one will show because it's what we decided. So maybe the good question that you can ask yourself is who controls the data, and then how are they controlling the data, and how are they deciding what goes,
Intention.
what is going to be public and what is not going to be public. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really better way to reflect
Well,
the question.
actually, you coming back to the June series, we have been seeing how to really build up our infrastructure, where the memory is not static but something to create and design with. And I think co-creation is critical. All of the stakeholders must work together with the same ambition. But frankly speaking, Africa, African Union, and the nations, we are still looking to have our independent digital infrastructure. And
Right.
yeah, ahead we should do some. So as we're heading to the closing session, we have heard how technology enabling participation without disconnecting the heritage from its human and cultural context. As we've been talking about, we've understood how do we balance accessibility, preservation, cultural rights, and community ownership. This is all about the question you've been asking, Latifa. And before we move into our final reflection, I'd like to recognize a foundation that has guided the entire journey: intangible cultural heritage. Heritage doesn't exist in monuments, museums, or physical collection. Heritage lives in our languages, our songs, our rituals, craftsmanship, our traditional knowledge, our memories, and every practice through which communities express identity and belonging. The reason intangible heritage survives is because community continue to practice it. I think Ratifa now responded. So they continue to transmit it. They continue to give it meaning. And this is the philosophy behind a living archive.
Yeah.
LA is not about freezing courage in time. It's about creating systems where heritage can continue to breathe, evolve, and connect generations. Because the greatest archive is not simply the one that stores the most information. The greatest archive is the one that keeps people connected to their memory. As system architect, I think you understand it very well, Latifa. And today, as we concluding this chapter of our Living Archive July series, we are also demonstrating the very principle we have been discussing. A living system must continue evolving. It must create space for ideas, new leadership, and new custodians. The sustainability of any movement depends on on strength of its foundational vision, but on its ability to empower others to carry that vision forward. Therefore, today's moment is not only a change of a moderator, it represents something deeper, the continuous renewal of a living institution. Just as a cultural heritage is passed from generation to generation, the responsibility of advancing heritage innovation must also be shared. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's put our hands together to go together with this privilege to introduce Latifa Michomiza, a project leader of IRAGE Corporations, who will continue to hosting Journey of a Living Archive. Latifa, as we said, represents the next generation of breeders walking the intersection of cultural heritage, digital innovation, product development, community participation, and inclusive technology. Hello represents the next phase of a living archive, moving from conversation that inspire change toward product, platform, and systems that enable communities to participate in shaping their own digital memory. Latifa, I officially hand over a living archive hosting journey to you, and the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. It is a very, well, not so easy responsibility, but again, it's something that is really marked, as you said, a living ecosystem that is characterized by mostly evolving. So I'll be happy to be with you guys on board and to share insightful conversations with the hosts and go back and forth on how we can balance this new era of technology while still preserving the culture. Thank you so much. We'll be happy to work with you guys.
Wow, thank you so much, Latifa, and thank you to our incredible contributors, our audience, and everyone who has been part of our Living Archive July Series 2026. Over the 4 weeks, one message has become clear. Heritage is not only something we preserve, it's something we participate in. The future of memory is not built by one institution, one technology, or one generation. It will be built through collaboration, through communities, through shared responsibility, because a living archive is not defined by the stories it stores. It's defined by the communities it empowers to keep those stories alive. Thank you for joining us. The conversation continues. The archive remains alive. See you in the next chapter of a living archive.
See you.
Thank you, Elisha. Bye
Bye.
bye.
You're welcome, Olivia. Keep up, keep up. The linguists, you're doing
That was a
I
long
wrote. You have to
conversation.
Oh,
train
I
the
was so
models.
tired, man.
You
Oh,
have,
my
you have.
days
Huh?
were. Asa no
See
kunduma.
you then. Still alive, Latif. So
One
there you
second.
go.